Welcome to the Freedom Fridays podcast. With me, your host, Pete Clark, the Whispers guy. Work seems to expand to the time that we give it. And I've been investing my time, occasionally on a Friday, to explore how we use our time, our energy, our attention, and the impact it has on our identity. I've been exploring over season 1 some of the mindset shifts in the handcuffs of I have to the freedom of I choose to. And I've shared some conversations, some tips, some tools about how you might want to invest your own time, your own energy, your own attention, how you might want to, if you choose to, make some changes to your identity, how you might have freedom from I have to and design a life around I choose to. If that's of interest to you, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to this week's episode of the Freedom Fridays podcast. My guest this week is an old friend. Not that she's old, but I've known Aly for a while. She's a colleague. She's been working in this field of leadership and coaching for a number of years. And there's something interesting that I'd like her to share with us. So Aly, first of all, welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Always good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. And for those that are listening and watching, Aly is in the UK, where it's a perfect, apparently, winter morning. And I'm in Sydney, where it's a perfectly humid Sydney evening.
Yes, we've got frost, we've got sunshine, we've got all the things that you want in combination in the winter. Yeah, it's gorgeous. Cool.
So as a bit of context, Aly, I as the listeners and you know, I'm a solopreneur, a single business. I run it on my own, basically with some help, which has its challenges. I got to the end of last year and I felt knackered. Despite me feeling knackered at the end of the previous year, going, that's never going to happen again. Right. I fell into the trap, and you and I spoke offline about some of the early warning signs that I should have been aware of. And so typically in the popular press, you hear this term burnout. And, if I read some of the symptoms, if it was to self-diagnose, by Mr. and Mrs. Google, I'd go, yep, that's me, that's me, that's all me. That's something I'd like to explore if you wouldn't mind. And I know you've been doing some exploration, you've had experiences yourself, you coach people a lot on this. So my opening question is this: why now? Why is burnout such a prevalent thing now?
Oh, well, it's like a perfect storm at the moment, the horrors that we are inflicting upon ourselves. So it's really difficult to know where to start, because there are, on the one hand, there are lots of things building burnout or letting burnout grow. So we can look at that. And also, I think there are lots of things that are stopping us noticing it early as we could. So my experience is that people who really should know better, if we're using that phraseology, should notice easily, like you know what burnout is, you hear about it. We're getting there, we're still burning out, even though we know what it's like and we see it. So something is making leaders push through the early triggers of, oh, this doesn't feel quite right, I don't feel quite myself. I'm not enjoying my job as much as I was. I can't remember things. I'm just a bit exhausted. I don't want to go out for dinner with my partner. I'm just a bit done. Maybe I'm fed up with the sector, or I'm snapping at people, not noticing those things as soon. And then the next day is in front of the screen again. We don't physically move our bodies as much as we were. So It's like it's coming at us from both sides. So the measures of growth in organizations, push for more, sell more, grow more.
Yeah.
Don't move your body, stay in front of your screen. Don't meet people so much, because we're hybrid as we were. So it's just like a perfect combination of horrors coming at us.
I do sense in the corporate world, which we do most of our work in, over the years, this clamor for productivity and efficiency meant there was 3 of us around, and now one person's gone, so you and I have got a job and a half.
Yes.
right, with more expectation. And suddenly, whatever the pandemic did for us, now there's only one of us left with 2.5 jobs.
Yes.
And we've kind of come out of this weird time for the world with, again, maybe this is a huge judgment. Some organizations, leaders going, right, we need to fill the gap. We need to catch up what we missed over the last 3 years. Yeah. Go for it. Come on, Aly. You've got the potential. Just get it done. Get stuff done.
Yes.
And I'm reflecting on your initial comment, and it's maybe a small distinction, whether we're inflicting burnout upon ourselves or it's being inflicted upon us.
Well, I think both things happen. Definitely both things. I had an experience a couple of years ago, or at the beginning of COVID, which really gave me some good insight into being back in the inside, because I think we have a risk as external coaches, consultants, that we don't feel what our clients feel. So I haven't experienced it. I did an internal contract for a while working on a team, and suddenly felt that I've got a Teams call every half an hour all day, might be able to sneak a pee at 11:30 if I manage to turn my screen off for long enough and mute. And then at 6 p.m, after all the Teams calls had finished, we started the work, and the work got done. And I couldn't find anywhere to do any thinking. There was no thinking, there was no innovation, there was no creativity. It was just grafting hard. And it felt like trying to hold the sea back. So I just couldn't make the team hear me that there could be more productive ways of working than everybody meeting on all of the calls, and because it was going so fast. So I felt like I was sucked into a vortex and felt really inauthentic to myself, because I couldn't control my time, I couldn't control my diary, and the only thing I could do was leave because I couldn't impact it. Whereas if somebody hadn't felt what it could be like having time to be creative, having time to innovate, they wouldn't know the difference in that. So and then there's that downward circle of, when you're exhausted, you can't get off the sofa and go to the gym because you're knackered. So that happens. And then there's a biscuit gets eaten, and then your diet goes to pot. And it's just, one thing seems to be leading to the next, and you get sucked in, rather than this virtuous circle of, I've got oxygen, I've got space, I can move, I can find some thinking, I can do it better because I've thought about it. So it's almost like we deprive ourselves by agreeing to be part of a system which is doing this, but then we have to pay the mortgage. So it feels like it's a universally created something too. Yeah.
My own experience of that, anecdotally, would be if something's amiss, there's a gap in whatever well-being things I'm doing, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy to go, well, I've missed the training session, so I'm just going to sit and watch Netflix, and a small packet of Maltesers is okay, and I'm not going to get up early tomorrow to catch up. It becomes like a vicious cycle. Whereas the other side, I'm, if I'm meditating, or I'm sleeping well, or I'm doing my morning, whatever it is, walk. Oh, well, I'm going to have the salad, not the chips. No, I'm not going to have 2 biscuits. I'm going to have a quarter of one. And I'm going to go to bed at 10 and not midnight. And it becomes like a virtuous cycle.
Yes.
What's your experience in the people that you work with about what triggers either kind of route?
What triggers the noticing of it, or
the noticing? Well, I guess it's the acceptance that I'm on the vicious cycle, and the acceptance that I'm on the virtuous cycle.
Yes. Well, that's a great question. There's some need for someone to notice that they've fallen onto the downward spiral, and also to want to stop and to feel that they can. So some of it comes down to personality, of course. I do coach people who have a real people pleaser requirement. So they have been raised themselves to want to over deliver, to do a great job always, and will then give up the hobby because they haven't met the deadline. That can be a trigger to a downward spiral, is constantly chasing the next thing and not willing to stop. Boundaries, I think, are probably the root of making the change. So just deciding what comes first. Even that simple, do I put my tennis routine in my diary first before I agree to work, or do I put work in first? Which I think we've probably, most of us, seen that picture now on doing the rounds on social media, of the big rocks going in first and then the smaller rocks after, and the gravel going last. Yeah, we do tend to pile up the jar with gravel with work if we don't do it first. But for me, it's about something that creates enough space to cause a stop first. So if I don't get out for my run, my brain doesn't have time to stop, and then I can easily deteriorate into chasing the emails and getting straight onto the work. If I can just make myself keep that first boundary of get a run, and then I'm more likely to have a light breakfast. So for me, it would be that. It would be starting the day that way. Someone else, it might be, if I can get all my work done, I go to Zumba or whatever it is in the evening, or I read the book I like. So I think it's about starting somewhere with a one little boundary that you're willing to hold on to. But the thing I often talk about with clients is, with true burnout, I mean, the real proper drive home from work and you can't get out your car and you get carried home, you know, that happens. Nobody gets a letter the week before to say in a week it's going to happen, because you've really got there. It just gets you, and you almost everyone I've ever spoken to who's hit that wall has looked back and thought, yeah, there were some signs. I did have some tingling in my fingers. I could feel my top lip quake when I tried to speak. You know, there were signs, and we're ignoring those and pushing through them to until we really break. So it's
it fascinates me, because on many occasions, like you, when working with clients in a dialogue conversation, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, you know, whether it's about strategy or leadership or it could be anything. And I would ask, you know, very simple question, you know, if you were to document what to do, what would you say? And almost every single time they can document exactly what to do. So I'm kind of referring to, and I haven't taken this the wrong way, you know, I should know better. Well, I do know better, probably more than most. And I reckon most people know either what they're doing is not so good and what they're not doing is not helping. Well, they probably know it, but something's preventing them actually doing it, doing what they know. Well, one, do you see that? And how do they do it? Not just know it.
I believe, I'm not a behavioural psychologist, but I believe the psychology behind it will be people are getting a reward from what they're doing somehow. So they're either getting paid well, or they're getting told they're great, or they're actually enjoying it. You know, we can keep doing something we love until we burn out. We don't have to be miserable burning out. People do burn out doing stuff they love doing. So it comes down to, I mean, if I use myself as an example at the moment, I am more tired than usual, doing some things I don't really want to be doing, saying yes to some things I don't really want to be saying yes to, and really aware that the little early stages of burnout are definitely waving at me in a kind of, you know this stuff and you're still doing it. And so I'm in that moment that you're describing, that thinking of, what am I doing here? Why am I still doing it? And some of it is I'm not sure what else to do instead. Some of it is I feel like if I had a holiday, I might be able to think better. And then I can feel myself go into that downward, if this happens, once this has happened, you know, we hear people, once I've delivered this project, or once my kids have done their GCSEs, or whatever the exams are globally, but when this has happened, then that might be different. And actually it's the courage to say, you know, that's not the case. It could happen today. You can stop. And the only way to do it is to put a boundary in of some sort and decide, I'm going to look at this. And like with all behaviour change, really, self-awareness comes first. So just noticing, I look a little bit burnt out at the moment. I am noticing the signs. Hello, signs, here you are, I can see you. And just letting it in a bit is really the first step to it.
What that triggered in me was the thought, and I'm trying to reframe this, because I was about to say I suffer from this, because in many situations it's not a suffering, I quite enjoy it, but over-indexing, I suffer definitely. And what I'm talking about is this idea that what I do is who I am. But that's interesting, because I'm also a father and a husband and a mate and a son but that just doesn't seem to take as much of the space as the work I do.
Right.
And so, here's somebody who I respect and care for and who's knowledgeable telling me, you got to have some boundaries, Pete. But my whole identity is wrapped up in pushing through, creating a new workshop or program and delivering this. And, it's just wrapped up in the work that I do.
Mm.
So how do I, there's not a personal coaching session here, but I'm sure many people have their work wrapped up in who they think they are.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts or counsel or perspective on that?
Yeah, what just happened in my brain when you were describing that was it reminded me of some coaching I had when I was talking about public speaking, because as a northerner, I speak very quickly. And I'd been trying for years to learn to speak more slowly. And I was taught, you probably can't learn to speak more slowly, but you can add more pauses in. So stop more often. Mm-hmm. And so that's an interesting idea when you think about the personality that might burn out by over-indexing. So if I think about myself, I get really interested in things. So I've taken up tennis a couple of years ago. I can't just play now and again. I have to play loads and all week and get better at my forehand and try and serve faster, and all of that happens because that's just the way I roll. And that's the way you burn out, is doing that in all sorts of places. But I have learned to stop more, to put more pauses in. So to notice, oh, here's me getting interested in another thing again. Or it could be someone at work, oh, hello, here's my boss giving me another project. Why do I keep getting all these projects that I say yes to? Yeah. You might be someone who gets interested in everything and say yes to all of those things. And maybe that's who you are always going to be, someone who gets interested in everything. Yeah. But you could stop sometimes, or make sure that you're getting the walk sometimes, or that your workstation means you stand up sometimes, or that you're just starting somewhere with it and noticing that it's a recipe for danger. Yeah. And I think that's the first thing, is for us to all notice that it is dangerous what we're doing. We are combining a recipe. We're putting in the pot some things that together will make a dangerers combination. Yeah. So more hybrid working, less connection with people, less walking, that kind of thing.
Again, I have no argument with what you've said. I find, me included, the analogy, it's hard to even believe it's still a thing, but people do, well, ironically, people still smoke. And if they don't smoke, they now vape. And with that identity, here they are smoking the cigarette going, look, I know cigarettes kill people, but not me. And if it is me, it's not this one. It'll be the one that I smoke in 10 years' time. That's the one that's going to kill me. Yeah. So if I relate that to what I've, found myself falling into the trap of going, and the counter is true to, if I, the classic, a bit of a cliche, but it seems to bear out. If I own my first part of the day, if I own the morning, I can then own more of the day. Whatever whether it's a juice or a walk or some meditation or some movement, whatever it might be, whether it gives me agency or control or whatever it might be, if I get that done at the beginning of the day, what tends not to happen is what you hear people say, well, the day ran away with me. Yeah. Right. It doesn't run away with me because I've got the stuff done for me, the fuel, if you like, in the morning. Now, if, for example, I don't prepare that the night before, at least intentionally, and I've had a late night call like this, and I'm not going to get up at my usual time because I need an extra half an hour sleep. And then I hit the snooze button and it's like 45 minutes later. So I lose my ability, or my perception, I lose my ability of controlling the day, because I'm now, it's now 8 a.m. and, well, I've got to get showered and ready because my first call's at 9. So I better get down and check the news and make sure I've got no emails from the UK overnight. And then boom, I'm into my day. And guess what? The day runs away with me.
Yes.
So there's no question in there. It's more just a case of, duh, I should know better.
Yeah, but that, I mean, with the smoking and with the running around, that is the essence of denial, isn't it? Of not acknowledging the truth of the size of the problem. So whatever the technique is, whether it's getting a grip in the morning or playing rugby on a Saturday, or it's having the big conversation with the boss, it's knowing that some small lever like that will make quite a profound change, I think is probably really important for people. Because it can feel, if you're doing a great big job that you've consented to for 10 years and you've just kept getting promoted and that's what you've created, it can feel really difficult to know what the hell am I, because I've built my mortgage payments around that job, or what it's all created. So I think that can probably loop round into quite a scary, stuck place of I'm burning out and I have no idea how to stop burning out. And so if people are listening to this thinking that is me, I am sliding into that, just knowing that some small change will create a reaction. It's impossible for it not to start somewhere. You just have to start somewhere and then build your boundary you're talking about is getting up when the alarm goes off with the intention you set the night before to do the thing you said you'd do. But there's also, I mean, there's a whole world of people, maybe parents with little kids or people caring for people, where their morning gets knocked off whack all the time because they don't have that control, but still something can work. I've also, I mean, you know that my origins were physiotherapy. That's where I started my world. So I'm still very connected to the body, and it's our responsibility to it, and it's to us. You know, even just thinking I was supposed to be a moving creature, you know, that's where we came from, and how do I actually spend most of my day? That's an easy start. You know, even if you can't change anything about your meeting length, you could walk more or stand up sometimes, or just, are you feeling strong? Has your body got what it needs to do the job you're asking it to do?
Well, so often, Ali, I've heard phrases like, you know, if you want to get out of your head, get into your body. And I sense people have, you know, obviously we've got, and I'm going to say maybe controversial, mostly right, this intention and more conversation about mental health. But I wonder if it's too limited a conversation about mental health, when, you know, you would know, and I've experienced, my physical health contributes to my mental health. My relationship health contributes to my mental health. My spiritual health contributes to my so mental health is just, I don't think, and again, I'm not an expert, so this could be rubbish. Mental health is so much more than just mental health, it seems.
Yes. Whole human health. So such an important thing. Yes. And there's something as well that's interesting around, so when you asked me right at the beginning, why now for burnout? So for me personally, why now? I suppose there is a link to the fact I'm in my early 50s. And so my body's changing a lot, as all women's do. And men are deteriorating factually as well towards getting older. And at that time, we're very often peaking in our career. So the pressures are on. The teenagers have just started to leave. If people have kids, you know, that there's a chapter where the house gets more spacious, and there's another chapter of big work while your body's getting more tired. And are we honouring that and giving that what it needs at the same time as well is big thinking. And what are we ignoring in our bodies? So quite often, if you ask a senior leader in a coaching session, tell me what's going on in your body, well, there's a cold sore, or there's a stomach upset, or there's a, you know, my body's not great, to be honest, you know, I'm not fit, and it comes out, and people are just ignoring it because they're too busy. And that's very interesting to me, that we've created this life now where bodies are kind of not mentioned or honoured like that.
Almost ignored.
Just relied upon. This body will keep me going.
Yes, it's almost taken for granted. But until you know, some life event happens and you're slammed in a hospital for 3 weeks, like, shit, I got to change.
Yes, and that's interesting. Why do we have to have a heart attack before we change? And the data says many people who have a heart attack don't make any changes afterwards.
That's what it reminded me of, and I can't remember the exact data, but something like out of 100 heart attack patients, when instructed by the surgeon to, you've got to change your lifestyle or you will die, right? Perhaps you could argue the most ultimate consequence ever. Only 38% do.
Yes, it's fascinating, isn't it?
What? You should know better. You've just been told you got to change your lifestyle. But I wonder, it kind of makes me philosophical and go, well, do we deserve it? And do we kind of deserve burnout?
Well, there's a question, is it? Do we deserve burnout? The part of it that I notice is the more money we've got and the more privilege, the less the body is required to do. So I noticed as a young adult, things happening, like I'm old enough that I had a car without power steering and then had a car with power steering. And suddenly you can feel the muscle in your arms a bit impacted by not having to move the steering wheel as stiff as it was. And then you get a posh house with an electric gate and suddenly you don't have to jump out of the car and open the gate. You just press the button and the gate opens and then you go. And I think it's rather similar with technology and privilege in leadership, where actually physically we might be being less demanded in the world we create, and technology isn't serving bodies. So it's fantastic news that the whole sport tech industry, med tech, it's all on the grow again now, because maybe we've reached a cul-de-sac of it doesn't work without the body. We're going to have to really look at that again.
That's fascinating, isn't it? And again, most of my dealings with clients would be they're so stuck and relying and revere almost what's going on in the head. Which is ironic, because obviously that's part of your body.
Sure.
But it's almost like it's separate too.
Yes.
Perceived to be, yeah, but my head's, that's what I'm a strategic thinker. Oh, and how often do you hear people get complimented by, oh, they're really smart?
Yes.
But it's all just what's between their ears.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without an appreciation of the holistic impact of your body on your thinking and vice versa.
Yeah, and then if you want to stretch that a little, there's mind and gut, what's going on in your gut to what's going on in your head. Whereas actually those two things are quite connected, by the whole nervous system and the body. So often I feel something across my shoulders or in my chest or in my breathing or in my knees or my legs, or, when you're nervous, you can feel your chemicals everywhere. It's all one big human. And so maybe there's something in that somebody who's feeling stuck could start to just feel their body. What can you actually feel? Where is that back pain starting from? Is it really the chair, or is it tension, or is it, what's going on? And actually the time saving of stopping and walking. So that the saying about meditation, you should meditate for 30 minutes a day unless you haven't got time, and then you should do it for an hour. So it's the same, I think, with a walk. If you haven't got time to go for a walk because you've got so much to do, you should go for a walk, because it'll all be done more quickly when you get back to the desk.
Yeah, that's the irony, isn't it? And that's where I think we've just got stuck and blind to this pushing through back to back. And look, it was a badge of honor in the 80s, right? And it seems like we've kind of come back to this. There's so much going on. Like you say, I haven't got the time to stop and go to the bathroom.
Yes.
How many times I've been to a meeting in mid-afternoon when someone's come into the meeting going, do you mind if I have my lunch?
Yes.
And I'm going, oh my God, what's going on in your head or with your boss and your team that's okay? On the odd occasion, yeah, we all get, but that's a pattern, that's a habit.
Yes.
Why are we, what have we got to the place where it's become the norm?
Well, working on Teams and Zoom means you can now come to work with flu. If you keep your screen off, you can just keep pushing on through everything. You don't even need to stop for bugs. You can have COVID and come to meetings. It's great.
Yeah.
It's scary stuff.
Yeah.
But that's got to come from the top, from the culture of the organization, hasn't it? I mean, that's the work that we could be doing with lead teams, is what are the unwritten rules of acceptance here? What are we letting pass? Who are we not sending home that shouldn't be there? What's know what's going out. I did hear of a chief people officer interviewing someone for a wellness resilience type position in the team with flu in bed, and the candidate was saying, I'm not coming here if that's what you do. It's not for me, thanks. But that's interesting, you know, that's what's coming from the lead team. So if the leaders aren't modeling rest, breaks, reflection, innovation spaces, that it's not going to happen further down. It's got to come from there.
Yeah. And for me, there's an interesting irony there, because you know, we'd see that, you know, every day, depending on which sport you might be involved in. You know, we see it in high performing sports all the time, and yet the counter argument to that, certainly sometimes from a corporate, is but they're only performing once a week. Which you can argue, I get it, you know, the performance is the game and they've got the whole week to recover for the game, whereas, you know, the corporate game might be it's every day.
Yes.
How would someone break that mentality, not to kind of go, well, I'm only going to work once a week, not literally that, but how would they break that mentality of going, well, I just have no time to recover, to put space in?
I think probably, I mean, you ask 100 people, you get 100 answers to that. But I think for me, I would certainly go looking for people who do it well first and speak to them, ask them, because whenever you're somewhere where you feel like you're drowning in work and you can't cope with it, there'll be someone who's very chilled out and who's managing to manage that differently from how you're doing it. So it's interesting. It's a boundary question. What are they willing to tolerate and what are they not willing to tolerate, and what order are they doing things, and what are they delegating, and what are you saying yes to? One of the things I notice a lot in senior leaders is if they've stayed somewhere a long time, it's not giving away some of the stuff that they've taken with them into that new role. So sometimes moving to a new company can give you a chance to start again. So I'm not suggesting everybody leaves their job. That's an interesting concept, that you don't stop anything, you don't put any bags down before you pick some more up. And that would be a very quick go through your calendar. What's stuck with you and come with you that really shouldn't be with you anymore? What should have been left at the door when you came into this role? I've sat quite often with execs just stripping out the stuff they shouldn't still be doing.
I sense many executives have kind of metaphorical 5 mile wide shoulders, and they're carrying, and not least, we know psychologically they're carrying stuff from origin. Let's not get into that yet, but they're carrying stuff from the previous role and the expectations of the boss and the parent company and the shareholders and the customers and their team, and we've got an offsite to do, and then I've got a client meeting, then I'm going to coach someone, and someone's not well, so I'm going to, you know, it's just overwhelming. Yes,
and I think the 2 approaches to that that have worked really well. Someone asked me in my business, if someone bought your business tomorrow and started the following day, what would they just stop straight away? What would they look at and say, that's ridiculous, just don't do any of that? And that's a really great question, and people in jobs can do that to you. What would somebody just not do if they took over your job tomorrow?
I mean, again, you don't have to share if it's confidential. What did you say? Did you answer the question?
Yes, well, I had a good look at some of the stuff that actually was ludicrous. You know, some of the things I was still doing, trying to please people, keeping things going from ages ago, or things that weren't necessarily profitable. We were running a great big program for a great big automotive dealer that we were probably paying to deliver because we just had been doing it for so long. You know, one of those where it sneaks bigger and bigger. So yeah, just looking afresh at something and taking the time to do that. And the other one I was going to say, I've forgotten now, because
that's okay. We'll come back to it. If you'd be willing to share, I'm really interested, because in some ways you're the same as me. You're a mum, I'm a dad, you're a partner, I've got a partner, and I think it's just mainly you running your business, isn't it?
Yes, I've got a team, but yes,
a team, but you'd be the solopreneur in that sense. Take out, let's kind of part the daughter and the sister and all the other roles that we play, right? But even just those 3 roles, and I'm going to gender this for a second. How do you cope, and how can you possibly even thrive when the obligation or the expectation is that you've got to do it all?
Yeah, there's the question of the century, isn't it? Now he's going to get me started. Well, that question around doing it all, I mean, that's the big thing in that question, isn't it? You can't do it all for everyone all of the time. You can have moments where everything's in flow and it just all feels great. But I think to aspire to that is an impossible dream. Your contentment is what we're seeking, isn't it? Rather than smashing everything all of the time. Maybe that's part of the burnout mindset, is smashing everything all of the time. I think I was thinking about this earlier. I think the chapters in our life are very profound, particularly for a woman. So I can only speak from a woman's shoes. I've only done it as a woman, and I've done it as a single mum as well. So that's intense, trying to do that. And the fact is, my career was massively limited by becoming a single mum. And if I had a message for any women becoming single women, I would say, watch out for that when you're talking money. Because I mean, not every single mum is in the same situation, but I was very much raising the kids on my own. And so every time I tried to put my foot down on my career, a big opportunity would come, something would happen at home, I'd have a naughty kid, or I'd have something happen, and I would have to take my foot back off the accelerator. And that's on me, not on my kids. Those are the choices I made. I could have kept my foot on the accelerator and got a nanny. I chose not to at that time. But finding contentment in that is still possible, but it's a constant realigning of expectations. And I think the route to danger is not realigning the expectations and really still wanting to push on. So we spoke momentarily about Jacinda Ardern and her decision to stop and her signs of burnout. Just the most fantastic decision to stop before falling in a heap for me. And I know everyone will have their own view on that, but listening to the signs of it's too much, I don't feel okay. She said, I felt as if I should be restored by the end of the summer and I didn't feel restored. I mean, that's one of the first signs of dangerous burnout, is you don't feel better after a holiday. And so just accepting that is truth. And so what do you want to create in the truth that you've got, for me, feels like helpful thinking. Doesn't mean I don't wake up sometimes and feel annoyed I haven't got as much money as my ex. We won't go there.
No, that's an offline conversation.
But I made the choices and I was there with the kids, and that's still the choice I'd make again. So that's cool. But this having it all conversation isn't a conversation. I don't think anybody probably can have it all.
I wonder if it's in the distinction. And I'm kind of talking out loud, because if I reframe it as, even just those three labels we use, partner, mum, solopreneur, you are it all. You're all three. And I wonder if the do it all inherent in it is you smash all three.
Yes.
And unless you're smashing one of them or two of them, then you're unworthy of the label.
Yes, but then it's about, what does smash it mean? So with the parenting, for example, one parent compared with another parent would describe what smashing it would be, wouldn't they? So I feel as if I've got very competent kids who could make their way around the world competently, because I haven't been able to do all of the things that two parents being there for them without a job would have been able to do all the time. But that for me is smashing it, that they can get their own act together. But it's not what I'd imagine necessarily on, in every occasion, not being there for them or having to stay away with work. It's not always what smashing it is, not definable necessarily, is it? So it's that your own relationship with smashing it, I think, perhaps is helpful to explore. What's success?
That question around relationship, I've asked many times to many different people, and you should see the trans-derivational searching that goes on when they don't even kind of compute the question. What's your relationship with fear? What's your relationship with your body? What's your relationship with yourself? What's your relationship with, it's like, oh, I thought relationship with just with one other person. But just how you relate to smashing it, success, burnout, all the roles that we play. It's a fascinating question.
Yes, it is. And if to stay with the woman part of it, it's hard not to, really, in that success part, that the expectations on women to to be a certain way or not be a certain way add another level of complexity to it. So even at the weekend, I got into a conversation which started off jokey, but actually was rather inflammatory, where there was a conversation about what a strong woman is and who, when is a woman strong? Is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? Or, are we supposed to be strong? We're not too strong. And, people don't like it if we look and feel too strong, but actually you have to be pretty strong if you're going to be a woman and have a job. It's an interesting juggle that is expected of female senior leaders to be strong.
Oh, well, look, as we chatted a little bit before we came online here, it's unfathomable to me how we've come to this place. So again, I don't want to get into that space right now, but I do want to pick up on the leaders, the female leaders that you work with, that you see do it well. And I know do it well is a subjective definition. What do they tend to do? What are some of the patterns that you've seen in the female leaders that do it well?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that is which of the female leaders can keep reinventing themselves well? Because the difference between a female professional life and a male, I think, is the chapters, the constant transition of the woman. So whether or not they decide to have kids, there's still from being a child to being a young woman to being a competent middle-aged woman, and then menopause will come for everybody, and becoming a mum or IVF or all of the other things that impact hormones that will happen, and all the different personalities and roles that we take. The women I know who do it well, if I measure do it well, I include they're happy and having a nice life doing what they're doing. They're the ones who are agile in deciding, for this chapter, this is what I want it to be like, and this is what I'm willing to put up with, and this is what I'm not willing to be put up with, and this is what I want my professional reputation to be based on. It's not about working dawn till dusk and never seeing my family. It's about what it is. So it's quite easy to define Jacinda Ardern's personal brand. She's worked very hard to make sure that's clear. This is who I am and what I stand for. So let's say that's one of the measures, is that sort of self-defining of who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah. And look, again, it's interesting, using Jacinda as an example, because obviously in Australia we're a bit closer to New Zealand, and some of the commentary on the ground is sadly less than complimentary. And yet she has this phenomenal, it would appear, perhaps it's press driven, I don't know, but this phenomenal perception of her as a leader, let alone female leader. And yet it's not quite the same in the country that she was governing. It's a fascinating incongruence.
Yes, and maybe further away, we don't hear so much about the actual facts and the principles of her government decisions, but we see the leadership personality and the preferences she's taking in terms of how she shows compassion, or so there's an interesting conversation there about whether or not you're actually making good decisions compared with whether you're using the behaviors that are perceived as leadership. But then there's also, in that question that you asked about, or the observation that it's less positive, that is factually more likely to be true as a female leader, that you just are generally attacked more. So
how again, unfathomable to me why that would happen. Why do you think it happens?
Well, that's a life's work to try and understand that. I mean, there are things that have been written very publicly, like Sheryl Sandberg's original Lean In book, which has come under some fire for various things, but there's some very interesting research in there about the same story being told, gendered, male or female, and when it was a woman and powerful, she was less popular than if it was a man. So the same story, just as a woman, wasn't liked. So we attach adjectives to women that are not attached to men for doing the same kind of thing. And even some of the language that we use, the describing women as intimidating or bossy or, you know, whatever they might be called, which we just wouldn't use for men. But so there's something very, very far back in all of that.
You'd never hear somebody call a man bossy.
No. There is a ban bossy campaign in the UK to try and highlight that is a gendered piece of abuse. Yes. Ban bossy.
Again, raise my awareness. What other adjectives are used that are gendered that are never used to describe a man?
Well, you can do a column of words for men and for women for the same emotion. So if you take, if you take rage, for example, proper big anger, then women would be called over emotional. She's a bitch. You know, these kind of words that are associated with high emotion women. With a man, he's strong, he's impactful, he knows his own mind, he's a leader. So all of those words are flipped both ways, and that's not for all women. In all cases, there are some amazing organizations where amazing women are being given everything they need to be fantastic. But it does, I mean, it happens in little girls and little boys. You see the differences very, very early, and at the moment the male leaders at the top are still the dads of the little girls at the moment. So we've got some more unconscious bias to live through until we get to the generation where these young boys that are being taught differently get to the top. No offense to you, as a very open daddy, I'm sure.
No, well, you know, none taken. And I guess I do feel a little bit complicit because it's my cohort, if you like, without assuming responsibility. And I might quote this wrong, but I think it was something off, I don't know if you're familiar with the Man Enough podcast.
No, don't know that.
Which is two men and a woman who discuss about how to redefine toxic masculinity. And I've listened to some fascinating mic drop moments in that podcast. And what I'm referring to is some research that was done that, and this, I don't know if this is more American or global, I don't know. So again, I don't want to quote it, but something like men who have daughters want their daughters to be strong, assertive, confident, you know, because that's my daughter, but don't want the same attributes to show up in their partner.
Yes, that's
just for me as a kind of like I'm interested in the psychology of that, and you know, all of the impact of that is just staggering.
Yes, it's mind-blowing, and
mind-blowing.
Yes, it is, and almost impossible to begin to get words around it, because it doesn't make any sense. You know, if it was to do with people who are called Sarah or people who are called James, you know, we're going to treat everyone called James like that. Be like, no, because it's not fair. So there's nothing logical that will work with that. But if we're linking it back to the burnout thinking, for women in senior leadership positions, there's something very important in all of that to be including in their thinking about how they want to look after themselves and where they want to be having their fights or not, or you know, where they want to be working. I'm always in a dilemma when I'm working with an organization where there's some really proper old school sexism showing up, and I'm working with women. Often we're asked to come and do a coaching circle with this group of women and help them have the big conversations. And I'm always very torn between, let's help them with that, and also leave, go work somewhere else. Don't stay with him because he does this. So it's a real dilemma. Are we trying to change the world, or actually are we looking for more female founders to set up more organizations? Because actually it makes me think of that old joke about when you're asking for directions somewhere and they say, well, if you're going there, I wouldn't start from here. You know, if you were trying to create an equal world, you wouldn't start from here and try and change it to an equal world. You would create something different. So it's going to need some real innovative change for something.
And I sense it reminds me of the old the hackneyed starfish story. You know, somebody walking up the beach and there's, you know, the beach is covered in starfish, and they're picking up one and throwing it in and picking up one and throwing it in. And, you know, the comment is, well, you can't possibly hope to affect all of them. Nope, but I can this one. Yes. And I can this one. So, you know, accepting and acknowledging the dilemma, just honoring and acknowledging the work that you do with people, women, in those situations, because we probably can't change everything, but you can change that one.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
And
that one.
For definite. And I think maybe we're helping starfish help each other too. So one of the things we've started really focusing on over the last few years is working in a way that causes a movement rather than just with one female leader. So connecting women together with each other in groups of 6 or 8 to be coached together across an organization. So many cohorts of those groups who then globally can support each other and speak to each other.
Right.
And we've used rituals and structures in those coaching circles, which things like strengths focus, using listening environments, improving coaching skills across cohorts of women. And so now we've got groups in Beijing and Toronto who've all gone through the same kind of thinking, and so now can pick up the phone or Teams call to another woman to say, this is something that I'm struggling with, what would you do? And that feels, for me, like I can sleep at night better than when I was trying to go knocking on lead team doors and trying to change that way. So
is that what you would call a coaching circle?
Yeah, well, coaching circles exist in lots of different ways. You can just take 6 people, coach them, but when we go into organizations and implement a coaching circle program, it's about that. Yeah, it's about creating a movement of, because I was very disturbed when I did some diversity and inclusion work a few years ago. I got very upset by the idea. In all the culture change books, it says culture change has to come from the top. And we know factually that everyone at the top, nearly, apart from a few, is a bloke. So I thought that means, by definition, it's up to men for change to happen, and we can't therefore impact it as women. And I wasn't willing to go there with that thinking. So I thought, okay, so if that's how else could you change a culture other than from the top? And the answer is in big numbers of people who all have some shared purpose in an organization.
Yeah, but I like that in terms of creating a movement, because a movement can happen from anywhere.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we now have made it a bit better where people get buy-in from their leader, so that could be the guy above them. And we also get senior male sponsorship across the organisation to come and help with that conversation as well. And a big part of that whole conversation in the coaching circles is around wellness, avoiding burnout, keeping going, keeping the energy going as well, because what we don't want is women conking out and dropping out of the leadership talent pipeline because they're too tired with the whole.
And I sense, I'm guessing the research would go, if they did, they would be labeled, and therefore it would be, this self-fulfilling prophecy. And the classic research, there's 10 attributes, and the woman goes, well, I haven't got 2 of them, and the bloke goes, I've only got 2, I'm going to go for it anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
I know that's stretching it a bit, but that's the essence of it, isn't it?
Absolutely is, and that's built into the nature of the coaching as well, in the circle of that noticing that in each other. So calling that out as a thing that women are likely to take themselves out of equations before they've even started, and it's easier to spot that in each other than it is in oneself. So building in that peer accountability is very helpful. So they notice it themselves and their teams and their daughters and their everyone. So
I'm maybe opening myself up here a little bit. What broadly, maybe not specifically, but what could I do as a white middle-aged man, right? It's my cohort, so I'm accepting a little bit of complicity in that. What could I do?
Well, there are some organizational things that men could do, and also some personal things in noticing it. So I think organizationally there are practical things like understanding that when we put jobs out to market, there is some language that will attract men more than women, for example. That would be very easy to just go on a course and learn and just accept that that's true. And there are some small things like going out for drinks after work, that amongst the hundreds of women I've worked with, that comes up all the time. As soon as they become a young mummy, they drop out of the social scene and where the big conversations happen because they can't join those things. So thinking carefully about where the social side of an organisation lies and where the big decisions are made. I mean, the worst I've heard about in my career was in Sweden. There was a lead team where they looked as if they were having the big conversations during the day, and then the men went to a sauna in the evening, and that's where the actual decision was made. So I was trying to coach a woman trying to decide whether she should just walk in, take her kit off and get in the sauna and see if that would help the decision, but she wasn't up for that. But that, I mean, that's an extreme, but it's a useful metaphor because that kind of happens in different ways in different places. So there's that understanding organizational bias and knowing what makes it harder, really accepting it as a truth that it just is harder for women to get there. Sometimes one of the trickinesses we have is that some of the women who've done very well in my generation and are at the top have managed to do it by being hardcore and just adopting the behaviors of the men and getting there. And sometimes they say, there's no problem here, I've managed to do it, why can't everybody else do it? So that can be tricky in itself. So understanding there are different ways of being a woman, and that just if you can look around your boardroom and see a woman, it doesn't mean that it's fine for all women in that organization necessarily. It could still be very hard. Yeah,
there might be a temptation to use that as evidence, right? You know, we've got our ratios and, you know, quotas sorted, so we're good.
Yes. So that question, as you would have with any culture program, really, of who does well here, is an interesting question. Who succeeds, and which women succeed here, and which ones are we losing? But with a real acceptance that diversity breeds innovation. So if everybody's seeing the world through the same lens, then you're limiting your success. By bringing in someone that feels really different, it will be difficult because it's harder, but that will breed innovation. So on the personal side, I think you're doing what you're doing. It's listening, it's learning, it's exploring, it's asking big, deep questions of individual people. What would help you? What's making it difficult for you? With the real knowledge that we've got of these generations of women having just not had the opportunities come at them in the same way, statistically still less likely to get a job they apply for, and many of those things. But I worry always with the question, what would help, because every woman needs different things. But I think that holding it mindfully, those chapters that occur for women, every time something new happens, there's a baby or there's a change in life, it's hard again. Trying to get back into the workforce. We just it's like the rug keeps slipping a little bit for women. It's just that bit harder at each stage.
Well, thank you. I think you've let me off the hook a little bit there. I appreciate the candor and the sensitivity. Maybe one last question, Ali, and again, you can answer this in any way, shape or form. You talked about the significance for women with the chapters that they're going through in life, which is so multifaceted. What's the next chapter for you?
Oh, there's a good question. Well, I feel really, I can feel a page turning in my life because we've got 4 kids and they're all almost off the books and going on to do their things. And I can feel a sense of, at 53, a sort of a combination of, I'm in my full power now. I don't feel that dropping off the cliff thing. I feel I've got a lot still going on here and I would like to find a way to use it. Some of that is a responsibility, passing it down the way. So I'm setting up an extra little business which is about helping young coaches and baby coaches get going. So that's I'm podcasting for them and sort of trying to pass it back as fast as I can. I do quite a lot of mentoring for young women and getting people going. But professionally, for me, I'm at that tippy toe of, what should I do with this big next chapter? Because 53 to 63 feels like a really powerful 10 years. So I'm interested to see what that brings. Can't decide quite what to do with it yet. So I think I better go for a run or go on holiday or something nice and relaxing.
Well, whenever you have that insight, I would love to welcome you back on to discuss what you've decided not to do and also what you've decided to do.
Yeah, stop some things first. Yeah,
I think some people will be really welcome to hear that. So look, Ali, thanks again. I appreciate the time and the candor, the vulnerability, the insights that you provided about, why is burnout happening now and what could we possibly do about it? So really grateful for what you've shared.
Great pleasure. Thanks, Pete.
You're welcome. Speak soon.